I was knocked to the ground in a crowded airport terminal. No one helped. Not even my cousin. She just watched, then turned away. 1 week later, an unmarked envelope arrived. Inside was a small, cold key and a note. It's time. I didn't know that key wouldn't just open a door. It would unlock the filthy secrets my stepmother buried and give me the weapon I needed to take her down. My name is Tinley Charles. I am 32 years old, and until that morning, I was defined by my job. I am a senior analyst at Northbridge Insight, a data corporation in Westbridge that prides itself on seeing patterns others miss. I was, in fact, on my way to secure a promotion that had been 6 years in the making, a vice president position. The presentation was memorized, loaded onto my laptop and 2 separate thumb drives. My suit was meticulously pressed, and the only thing on my mind was the 9:30 flight to Chicago, a 2-hour jump that would land me in the boardroom by noon. Westbridge International was a chaotic mess, as it always is on a Tuesday morning. The air was thick with the smell of burnt coffee from the kiosk and the sickly sweet aroma of cinnamon rolls from the food court. 2 gates down. A final boarding call for a flight to Denver echoed over the intercom. The voice tinny and urgent. I pulled my roller bag, the wheels clicking rhythmically against the polished terrazzo floor. Weaving through a sea of travelers. A family with 3 overtired children was having a meltdown near the newsstand. Businessmen in identical navy suits barked into their phones. I was just one of them. Anonymous, focused. My eyes on the departures sign for Gate B12. I was checking my phone for the 3rd time in 5 minutes. Just a nervous habit, when the sound cut through everything. Tinley! Tinley Charles! It was a shriek, a high, theatrical sound that scraped against my nerves. I stopped so abruptly that a man behind me nearly tripped over my suitcase, muttering a curse. I knew that voice. It was the voice that had poisoned the last 4 years of my life. I turned, my stomach tightening, and there she was, Veronica Hale, my stepmother. She was dressed for an audience, as always, a cream-colored cashmere coat, hair perfectly blonde and smooth, oversized sunglasses perched on her head like a tiara. For a fraction of a second, my analytical mind tried to process her presence. She lived 45 minutes from the airport. She knew I was traveling today, but to show up like this? It was outside the bounds of even her brand of drama. I braced myself for a lecture, a guilt trip, another passive-aggressive plea for me to reconsider my priorities. I opened my mouth to say, "Veronica, what are you doing here? I have to catch a flight." I never got the words out. She closed the 10 feet between us in 3 rapid strides. Her face was a mask of furious indignation, a performance for the growing audience of onlookers who had paused, sensing a scene. Then, she slapped me. It was not a small, private gesture. She drew her arm back and struck me with her full weight. The sound was a sharp, wet crack that seemed to silence the entire terminal. My head snapped to the side with such force that my neck cracked. A burst of white, blinding light exploded behind my eyelids, followed by an immediate, throbbing heat. My phone flew from my hand, skittering across the floor and coming to rest near a discarded pretzel wrapper. The ambient noise of the airport rushed back in, but it was different now. It was focused on me. "You ungrateful bitch!" Veronica screamed, her voice breaking with crocodile tears. "You dare to leave? You dare to run off and chase your precious money while your father lies dying in his bed?" A gasp went up from the small crowd that had formed a tight, suffocating circle around us. A murmur rippled through them. Phones. I saw them. 2, then 3, then a dozen glowing screens rising from the throng, all pointed directly at me. The red record lights felt like laser sights. My cheek was on fire. I could taste blood, metallic and sharp, where my teeth had cut the inside of my lip, but the physical pain was nothing. It was a dull echo compared to the absolute, paralyzing humiliation. I was frozen. My training, my logic, my ability to analyze and respond, it all evaporated. I was just standing there, exposed, a spectacle in the middle of Concourse B. Veronica was just getting started. I have cared for him. I have held his hand. And you, his own daughter, you run away. What kind of monster are you? That's not, I stammered, my voice a useless croak. He's not, you know that's not true. Leaving him to die, she shrieked, pointing a perfectly manicured finger at me. The crowd pressed closer. I heard their whispers. Her own father. Shameful, absolutely shameful. Did you see that? She just stood there. My eyes, watering from the impact, scanned the faces, pity, disgust, morbid curiosity, and then I saw her. Standing just behind the first ring of onlookers, half hidden by a concrete pillar, was Elena. My cousin, my mother's sister's daughter, the only person left in the world who shared my blood, my memories of a life before Veronica. She was clutching the strap of her messenger bag, her eyes wide as saucers, her face pale. A wave of desperate, agonizing relief washed over me. Elena, I breathed. She was here. She would tell them. She knew the truth. She knew my father wasn't dying, that he had a chronic, manageable illness that Veronica used as a bargaining chip. She knew I had been there every single weekend for the past 2 months. She knew. I looked at her, my entire being pouring into that one glance. Help me. Say something. Please. Elena met my gaze. I saw her lip tremble. I saw the conflict warring in her eyes, the fear, the pity. I saw her take a small, aborted step forward. Auntie, she whispered, so low no one but me could have possibly seen the word form. Stop. Veronica, in the full throes of her performance, didn't hear, but she saw the direction of my gaze. She paused, her chest heaving, and looked over her shoulder at Elena. She didn't say a word. She just looked at her, a cold, flat, reptilian stare, and I watched my cousin crumble. Elena's eyes dropped to the floor. She flinched, as if she were the one who had been struck. She pulled her arms around herself, took a step back, and another. She physically melted into the crowd, turning her back to me, hiding her face, becoming just another spectator with a phone. The betrayal was a fresh, physical blow. It was sharper than the slap, colder than the judgment of strangers. That was the moment I truly shattered. The heat in my cheek turned to ice. Ma'am, are you all right? A new voice, uniformed. 2 airport security officers were pushing their way through the circle. The crowd, suddenly wary of authority, parted. What's going on here? The taller officer asked, his eyes on me, then on Veronica. This woman assaulted my daughter, Veronica cried, instantly changing tactics, her voice dissolving into the pitiful sobs of a concerned mother. She's not well. She's having some sort of breakdown. She's delusional, saying her father is... Oh, it's just terrible. Ma'am, I'm asking you, the officer said, turning to me. His voice was firm, but not unkind. This woman, he gestured to Veronica, struck you. We have multiple witnesses. Do you want to file a report for assault? This was the crossroads. This was the moment. I could say yes. I could have her arrested. Right here, in front of everyone. I could press charges and let the legal system handle it. My eyes found Elena again. She was peeking through the arm of a man in a hoodie, her face a mask of pure terror. She wasn't scared for me. She was scared of Veronica. And I saw my future. A messy public court case, my career, the Chicago meeting, the promotion, all of it vanishing in a cloud of tabloid headlines about a disturbed daughter and a family feud. Veronica would paint me as unstable. She would use Elena as a witness. And, as I had just seen, Elena would do whatever Veronica told her to do. I looked back at the officer. My entire body was trembling, but my voice, when it came out, was shockingly steady, cold. No, I said. Thank you, officer, but that won't be necessary. The officer frowned. Ma'am, she... It was a misunderstanding, I said, cutting him off. I stooped and picked up my phone. The screen was spiderwebbed with 1,000 tiny cracks. A family matter. We're all under a lot of stress. My father is very ill. I let those words hang in the air, a concession to Veronica's narrative that made me sick to my stomach. But it worked. The officer's face softened with a look of professional pity. All right, but I'm going to have to ask you both to move along. You're creating a public disturbance. Of course, I said. I did not look at Veronica. I did not look at Elena. I straightened my blazer, picked up the handle of my roller bag, and, with as much dignity as a person who has just been publicly assaulted and betrayed can muster, I turned and walked toward the TSA checkpoint. I could feel hundreds of eyes on my back. I could hear Veronica's voice, already shifting back to a saccharine coo as she explained the situation to the officers. I didn't look back. I vowed, as I pushed my suitcase onto the X-ray belt, that it was the last time she would lay a hand on me, the last time she would humiliate me, the last time I would ever let her see me bleed. The flight to Chicago was a blur. I sat in seat 12A, a window seat, and stared at the clouds for 2 solid hours. My cheek throbbed in time with the engine's hum. I didn't cry. I was beyond tears. I was in a cold, quiet, empty place, a place of pure, crystallized rage. When we landed, I turned my phone back on, the cracked screen making the display hard to read. It exploded with notifications, voicemails from work, texts from concerned friends, and an alert from a local Westbridge gossip site. The video was already online. It was titled, "Vicious Daughter Abandons Dying Father at Airport." The clip was cleverly edited. It started just after the slap, so it only showed me shoving Veronica's hand away as I tried to regain my balance. It showed me, face red and contorted, and it showed Veronica, sobbing, looking like a victim. The comments were brutal. What a monster. I hope she rots. Her poor mother. They didn't even get that right. She wasn't my mother. I felt dizzy. This was her plan, not just to stop me, but to destroy my reputation, to paint me as an unstable, cruel daughter, so that when the time came, and I knew it was coming, no one would believe me. I was scrolling through the hate, my hands shaking, when a new text message appeared at the top of the screen. It was from an unknown number. There were no words, just an attachment. I clicked it. It was a photograph, a clear close-up shot of a brass nameplate on a wooden door. It read, "Horizon Gate Legal Group, Estates and Trusts." A second later, another text from the same number came through. 5 simple words. "You're going to need this soon." The Chicago meeting was a disaster. I couldn't focus. My presentation, once sharp and intuitive, came out flat. I fumbled my data points. I saw the partners exchange glances. The promotion evaporated before I even finished my second slide. I caught the 5 o'clock flight back to Westbridge, my cheeks still a dull, bruised purple under a thick layer of concealer. The cracked screen of my phone a constant reminder. The text from the unknown number sat there, a silent, ominous promise. Horizon Gate Legal Group. I didn't text back, not yet. Staring out the window into the dark, rain-slicked sky. My mind didn't replay the airport scene. It went further back. It went back 5 years, to the day my father told me he was getting remarried. My mother died in a car accident when I was 21. A drunk driver ran a red light. It was sudden, senseless, and it shattered my father. Daniel Hale, and me. For the next 6 years, we were a 2-person team. He was the resilient single dad, though I was hardly a child. He was an architect, a man who loved clean lines and solid foundations. He poured his grief into his work and into me. We had Sunday dinners. We argued about politics. We rebuilt. He was strong. I, in turn, launched my career at Northbridge, determined to be as independent and solid as he had always taught me to be. I was 27, living in my own apartment in downtown Westbridge, when he met Veronica. She appeared at a fundraiser for the city orchestra, a vision in dark green silk. Veronica was everything my mother was not. My mother was warm, bookish, and wore her heart on her sleeve. Veronica was sleek, polished, and utterly impenetrable, She owned Verity Home Studio, a boutique interior design shop in the wealthy suburbs of Maple Ridge. It was the kind of place that sold $100 candles and minimalist suede sofas that cost more than my first car. She was, by all accounts, a perfect catch. Successful, charming, beautiful. Our neighbors, my father's colleagues, even my distant relatives, they all adored her. "Daniel, she's a saint," I heard his old partner, Harold Price, say at their engagement party, "and so good for you." Veronica's performance as the perfect stepmother began immediately. It was a subtle, brilliant campaign. With me, she was all warmth and concern, always touching my arm, calling me honey, but to her friends, to the neighbors, she spun a different story. "It's just so hard," she'd say over brunch at the Maple Ridge Country Club. A conversation later relayed to me by a family friend. "I'm trying so hard to build a bridge with Tinley, but she was so close to her mother. She just struggles to accept me. My heart just breaks for her." And just like that, I was cast. I was the difficult one, the cold, unfeeling daughter who wouldn't embrace the wonderful woman who had saved her father from his loneliness. Any distance I created for my own sanity was seen as proof of my dysfunction. Their wedding was a lavish affair at her design studio. I stood there in a dove-gray dress I despised, smiling until my face ached, watching her wrap my father in a web of calculated charm. They moved into a sprawling, modern house in Maple Ridge, a house she had designed. My childhood home, the one my father and mother had built, was sold in less than a month. All my mother's furniture, her books, her art, gone. "We need a fresh start. Tinley," my father had said, his eyes already showing the first signs of a weariness I didn't recognize. For all of us, those family dinners became my personal hell. Veronica controlled everything, not just the menu, which was always some complicated, gluten-free, architecturally plated dish from her boutique's aesthetic. She controlled the conversation. We were not to discuss my father's old firm. We were not to discuss my mother. We were not to discuss my work, unless it was to frame it as stressful and demanding. "Tinley, darling, you look exhausted," she'd say, passing me a basket of artisanal bread I wasn't allowed to eat. "That company of yours, Northbridge, it just seems to take every ounce of you. Are you sure it's healthy?" The real shift happened about 3 years ago. My father's small, respected architecture firm was bought out in a hostile takeover by a massive, faceless conglomerate. He was 58, and they pushed him into an early retirement package. It broke his spirit. The man who loved clean lines and solid foundations suddenly had no foundation at all. He became smaller. He started spending his days in the garden, but he wasn't a gardener. He'd sit in the perfectly designed living room, staring at a television that was always off, and Veronica, the saint, stepped in to manage things. "Daniel, don't you worry your handsome head about the bills," she'd coo, bringing him a cup of tea. "I'll handle the investments. I'll handle the accounts. You've worked so hard. It's time for you to rest." And so, my strong, resilient father began to rest. He grew tired. He became dependent on her energy, on her social calendar, and most importantly, on her savvy financial arrangements. That was when she brought Elena into the fold. My cousin Elena, my only real link to my mother's side of the family. Elena was younger than me, still finding her way, working a dead-end barista job while trying to finish a communications degree. She had always come to our house for holidays, a whirlwind of nervous energy and quick laughter. Veronica offered her a job. "Just part-time, sweetie, helping at Verity Home Studio, just organizing invoices, running errands. It will give you some experience, and it will be so nice to have family around." I see it now. Of course, it wasn't a job. It was an acquisition. Elena, with her student debt and her anxiety, was the perfect pawn. Within 6 months, Elena was no longer just my goofy cousin. She was Veronica's assistant, her confidant, her shadow. The laughter was gone, replaced by a permanent, haunted look of someone walking on eggshells. Veronica's attention then turned back to me. "Tinley, this big apartment downtown must be so lonely," she'd say during one of our strained Sunday phone calls. "And so expensive. You should move back home, to Maple Ridge. We have so much space. It would be so good for your father to have you here." The offer always came with a string. "And you know," she'd add, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, "since I'm already handling all of Daniel's finances, it would be no trouble at all for me to just help you manage yours. Consolidate things. You're so busy, honey. Let me take that burden off you." I always said no. "My work is in Westbridge. Veronica, the commute is too long." Or, "I'm fine. Thanks. I like my independence." Each refusal was another nail in my coffin, another piece of evidence she could use against me. "See?" she would sigh to her friends. I just can't get through to her." A Cold War began. I kept my distance, visiting only when I felt my father's loneliness pulling at me, a guilt she expertly cultivated. I'd sit with him, trying to talk about his old projects, but his eyes would be distant, and Veronica would always be there, hovering, smiling. That's when he started handing things over, important things. I came by one afternoon and found them at the dining room table, stacks of manila folders between them. "Oh, Tinley," Veronica chirped. "Perfect timing. You're so smart with data. Your father and I are just organizing his retirement accounts." "My retirement accounts," my father echoed, his voice dull. "I'm just helping him," she said, tapping a file. "Insurance policies, the pension from the old firm, it's all so complicated. He needs someone to make sense of it." "I can look at those, Dad," I said, a cold dread starting to creep up my spine. "Oh, nonsense, honey," Veronica laughed, a sound like glass chimes. She slid the folder for his life insurance policy into her own leather briefcase. "You have enough on your plate. This is what wives are for. Don't you worry, Tinley. You just let the adults handle this. I am 32 years old. I am a senior analyst at a major data corporation. But in that moment, she had reduced me to a child, and my own father had let her. I've asked myself 1,000 times why I didn't fight harder, why I didn't scream. The truth is, I'm not a victim, not a helpless one. Anyway, I had my job, I had my own savings, I had a life entirely separate from them. What bound me was not ignorance, it was guilt. It was the crushing sense of duty to the man who had raised me, the man who was now a ghost in his own home. I was trying to honor his peace, and in doing so, I sacrificed my own. I endured Veronica because I thought it was what he needed. I remember one of the last times I saw him alone, or as alone as we ever were. Veronica was at a charity luncheon. My father seemed lucid, more present than he'd been in months. We were in the backyard, the air smelling of cut grass and Veronica's obsessively pruned rose bushes. "He's not a bad person," I said, stumbling over the words. "But he doesn't seem happy." "Tinley," he said, his voice quiet. He looked at his hands, the same hands that had drafted blueprints for half the city. They were spotted and thin. "I'm tired. I'm just so very tired. And she takes care of things. A man my age. He needs someone to take care of things." His admission was worse than an argument. It was a surrender. He was choosing this. He was choosing the comfort of her control over the difficulty of his own freedom. He was choosing to be taken care of. And in doing so, he was leaving me to fight a war on my own. It was a toxic cocktail of pity and resentment, and it left me paralyzed. The last time I saw him, 2 weeks before the airport incident, was the day he was diagnosed with a severe bronchial infection. It was serious, but it wasn't a death sentence. It required antibiotics and rest. When I arrived at the Maple Ridge house, I found him in the living room, propped up on the sofa. He was coughing, a deep, rattling, wet sound that scared me. He looked pale and was struggling for breath. "Where's Veronica?" I asked, kneeling beside him, my hand on his hot forehead. "Kitchen," he rasped, before dissolving into another fit of coughing. I walked into the kitchen, The room was a sterile expanse of white marble and stainless steel. Veronica was leaning against the center island, her back to me, phone pressed to her ear, and she was laughing. Not a polite chuckle, a full, deep, throaty laugh. "Oh, he's absolutely dreadful," she said into the phone. "But darling, the commission on the consignment, yes, I told her, if she wants it sold, I take 60%, 60, and she agreed." She was laughing about her consignment fees, about her shop, about money. I stood there for a full 10 seconds, frozen, listening to the sound of her laughter juxtaposed with the horrifying, liquid sound of my father's cough from the next room. She finally sensed me, turned around, and the laugh died instantly, replaced by a mask of wifely concern. "Oh, Tinley, I was just on with the pharmacy, trying to get your father's prescription." It was the most blatant, chilling lie I had ever heard. That was the moment. That was when I knew. She wasn't just controlling. She wasn't just manipulative. She was dangerous, and she didn't care if he lived or died, as long as she handled everything. The call came 2 weeks after I'd heard her laughing in the kitchen. 2 weeks after my father's cough had rattled the walls. I was at my desk at Northbridge, my eyes burning from staring at server migration data for 6 hours straight. My phone vibrated. It was Veronica. I ignored it. It buzzed again. Immediately. I picked it up, my voice clipped. "What is it, Veronica?" Her voice was a masterpiece of controlled hysteria. "Tinley, oh, God. Tinley, you need to come. You need to come to Maple Ridge. It's your father." "What about him? Did he fall?" "Oh, Tinley. It was a stroke. It was massive." Her voice cracked. "He's gone. Tinley, he's gone." She was already using the past tense. I dropped the phone and ran. I broke every traffic law between my downtown apartment and the suburbs, my mind a blank. White static, but I was already too late. By the time I screeched to a halt in her perfect circular driveway, the paramedics were zipping the black bag. Veronica, wrapped in a silk robe, was the one who had called 911. Her story, the one she rehearsed for the neighbors who gathered on the lawn, the one she tearfully gave the responding officers, was a piece of cinematic perfection. "He was just reading the paper," she wept, clutching the arm of a bewildered-looking policeman. "He gasped. He just gasped. He looked at me, officer, and he smiled. And then he just went. I held him. I held him in my arms until you got here. He went peacefully. He didn't feel any pain." She repeated that phrase again and again, like a mantra. He went peacefully. But I knew my father. He was a man who argued with gardening books, who fought with stubborn blueprints. He wouldn't have gone peacefully. And I knew Veronica. She was a storyteller. The funeral was 3 days later. It was less a memorial and more a Verity home studio production. It was held at the Silver Grove Chapel, a non-denominational beige box that Veronica had transformed with thousands of dollars worth of imported white orchids and tasteful, understated lighting. A string quartet she'd hired played a somber piece by Vivaldi. I sat in the front row, a statue carved from ice. My spine was rigid in a black wool dress I'd had to buy that morning. I did not cry. My grief wasn't liquid. It was a cold, hard, analytical stone in my gut. I wasn't just mourning. I was observing. I was processing the data. My father was dead, and this woman, his wife, had been laughing about commission fees while he coughed his lungs out. Now she was the grieving widow, the center of all sympathy. The attendees, a parade of my father's colleagues and her social climbing friends, filed past. They'd pat her shoulder, murmuring, "You are so strong, Veronica. What a rock. He was so lucky to have you in the end." When they got to me, their eyes were cool. They saw my dry eyes, my stiff posture. They saw the cold daughter, the career woman, the one who hadn't been there. My lack of public hysterics was, in their eyes, a confession of my indifference. At the reception in the chapel's poorly lit basement, Veronica demonstrated her true genius. She stood near the door, accepting hugs. when she spotted me standing alone by the watery coffee urn. She made a beeline for me. In full view of the rector and several of my father's oldest friends, she swept me into a suffocating, cloying embrace. Her perfume, a heavy gardenia scent, filled my nostrils. "Oh, Tinley," she sobbed, her voice loud enough to carry. "We only have each other now, just us girls. Don't you worry." She stroked my hair as if I were a child. "I will take care of you, just like I promised your father. I'll be a mother to you. I swear it." It was so grotesque, so nauseating, that I physically stiffened. And then, as she pulled back, her face still a perfect mask of public sorrow, her eyes met mine. The tears were gone. Her gaze was as flat and cold as a sheet of ice. Her grip on my upper arm tightened, her perfectly manicured nails digging into my skin. Her eyes, and her eyes alone, told me the truth. "You have no idea what is coming for you." I wrenched my arm away, rubbing the spot, and turned. I needed air. I almost bumped into Harold Price, my father's old partner from the firm before the buyout. He was a kind, rumpled man in an ill-fitting suit, and his eyes were red. He was genuinely grieving. "Tinley," he whispered, his voice thick. He glanced over his shoulder. Veronica was already occupied, recounting her "he died in my arms" story to a new audience. "Tinley, it's just awful. A terrible, terrible thing." "It is, Harold." He fumbled with his glasses, polishing them on his tie. "Listen, I don't know if this is the time or place, but, Daniel, we had lunch, maybe 6, 7 weeks ago, before he got that bronchial infection." My head snapped up. "You saw him? How was he?" "He was worried. Tinley," Harold said, lowering his voice even further. "He was worried about all this." He jested vaguely at the orchids, the house, the widow. "He told me he was planning to update his will. He was very specific. He said he wanted to make sure my girl is protected. He meant you, Tinley, to ensure fairness for his daughter." A jolt, cold and electric, went through me. "Did he do it? Did he update it?" Harold looked miserable. "That's the thing, kiddo. I don't know. He said he had an appointment. He said he was organizing things, with Veronica managing his calendar. I just don't know if he ever made it." He squeezed my arm, his hand trembling. "Just be careful. Don't just accept whatever version of things she's selling." He melted back into the crowd just as Veronica's gaze swept the room, looking for me. The whatever arrived 2 days later. The sympathy cards were still piling up on the marble entryway table. Veronica called me at my apartment. Her voice was no longer grieving. It was crisp, efficient. "Tinley, I think it's time we had a small family meeting. Just us, me, you, and Elena. We need to be on the same page about the finances. It's what your father would have wanted, for us to be transparent and secure. Come to the house, 3 o'clock. She hung up. It wasn't an invitation. It was a summons. I drove to Maple Ridge, my stomach in knots. The house was oppressively silent, antiseptically clean. She had us sit at the massive glass and chrome dining table. Elena was already there, perched on the edge of a chair, looking gray and ill. She wouldn't meet my eyes. Veronica, by contrast, was dressed in crisp white linen. She looked rested, vibrant, energized. She placed 3 thin, elegant file folders on the glass. "Right," she said, tapping the folders. "I wanted to do this as soon as possible, so we can all grieve properly, without having to worry about these details." She slid a folder toward me. I didn't touch it. "As you know," she continued, "your father's death was terribly sudden, so tragic." Her voice was a flat monotone, all performance gone. "It means many of his financial arrangements were incomplete, not finalized. I've been on the phone with our lawyers all morning." She paused, for effect. "What I have here is a temporary asset division, just to keep things stable, obviously, as his widow. I will be taking over the management of the Maple Ridge house and the main investment portfolios. It's just simpler. I will manage everything. And naturally, I will make sure both of you are taken care of. Manage. There was that word again. The word she used when she meant control. The word she used when she meant possess. I pushed the folder back toward her, unopened. Where is the will, Veronica? A small, tight smile twitched at her lips. Honey, that's what I'm explaining. It's complicated. No, I said. My voice was as cold and flat as hers. It's not. It's a binary question. There is a will, or there is not. Which is it? She let out a short, sharp laugh. It was a sound of pure, unadulterated condescension. Oh, Tinley, always the little analyst. So literal. Of course there's a will. But it's the old one. From before we were even married. It's practically irrelevant. It doesn't reflect his final wishes. It's all being handled. Handled by who? Our family lawyers, she said, waving a dismissive hand. Merrill and Drake Chambers. They are very expensive and very good. They are sorting through the probate. It takes months. Tinley, sometimes years. It's a mess. Which is why this, she tapped my folder, is so much cleaner. Just trust me. Let me handle this. I want to see the old will, I said, and I want the contact information for Mr. Merrill or Mr. Drake. Veronica's eyes narrowed. The mask was slipping. Tinley, you will not call them. I am the executor. I am the widow. You are the daughter. You are making this so much more complicated than it needs to be. Elena, I said, suddenly turning to my cousin, do you know anything about this? Did my father ever talk to you about a new will? About Merrill and Drake? Elena flinched, as if I'd struck her. She looked from my face to Veronica's, her eyes wide with pure, animal panic. She looked like a rabbit cornered by a wolf. She opened her mouth, and a tiny, terrified squeak came out. Veronica didn't move. She didn't look at her. She simply lifted her hand and tapped a long, red fingernail on the glass tabletop. Tap, tap, tap. The sound was deafening in the silence. Elena's mouth snapped shut. She visibly shrank in her chair, her shoulders hunching. She stared at her hands in her lap. I don't know anything about finances. Tinley, she mumbled, her voice barely a whisper. I just did what Aunt Veronica asked me to. I just ran errands. She was a hostage, and she had just confirmed it. I'm not signing this, I said, standing up, and I will be contacting my own lawyer. Veronica's face went blank. Fine, she said, her voice dropping an octave. Elena, darling, would you go to the kitchen and make us some tea? I need to speak to Tinley alone, privately. Elena practically bolted from the room. The second the kitchen door swung shut, Veronica's entire demeanor shifted. The boardroom polish vanished. She rose from her chair, not with anger, but with a slow, deliberate predator's grace. She walked around the table until she was standing directly in front of me, so close I could smell the gardenia. You listen to me. You stupid, arrogant little girl, she hissed, her voice a low, venomous rasp. You think you can waltz in here, after being gone for years, and make demands? Your father is dead. He's gone. I am in charge now. You are not in charge of me, Veronica, or my father's estate. Oh, am I not? She smiled. It was a terrifying, reptilian smile, all teeth and no warmth. You want to make trouble? You want to get your lawyer? Go ahead. But let me tell you exactly what happens next. She took a step closer. I will go to every single person in your father's address book. I will go to the rector at the church. I will go to Harold Price and all your father's old gossiping friends, and I will tell them the truth. What truth? I spat. The truth about how you abandoned him, she whispered, her voice full of false sympathy. How you were too busy with your important career to come see him. How you broke his heart. How he died, lonely and scared, because his only daughter wouldn't even return his calls in his final, dying days. I will tell them how you showed up at his funeral with dry eyes, just waiting to see how much money you could get. I will destroy your reputation in this town. Tinley, I will paint you as the most ghoulish, greedy, ungrateful daughter who ever lived. By the time I'm done, no one, not a judge, not a friend, not even your boss, will believe a single word you say. They'll think you're a monster. It was a declaration of war. It was blackmail, plain and simple, using my own grief and my father's memory as the ransom. I stared at her, my heart hammering so hard I thought it would break a rib. The worst part was, I knew she could do it. I knew she would do it. She had already laid the groundwork, painting me as the cold daughter for years. I said nothing. I just looked at her. Letting her see the calculation in my eyes, I let her see the analyst. She mistook my silence for surrender. She thought she had won. She smiled again, satisfied, and stepped back. Good girl. I knew you were smart. Now, you go home. You think about it. We'll talk again when you're ready to be reasonable. I turned and walked out of the dining room. I walked past the kitchen, where I could hear Elena crying quietly. I walked out of that sterile, cold house, got into my car, and sat there for 5 minutes, my hands shaking so hard I couldn't put the key in the ignition. She was right about one thing. I wouldn't be calling Merrill and Drake. I was going to find my own lawyer, someone who ate women like Veronica for breakfast. But before I left Maple Ridge, I did one last thing. I still had my key to the house. I waited. I watched from the end of the street. 30 minutes later, Veronica's white convertible pulled out of the driveway, probably going to the salon for a post-funeral pick-me-up. I let myself in. The house was cold and silent, smelling of orchids and bleach. I went straight to my father's office. It was a room she had redesigned into a gray and chrome nightmare, but he'd kept his old solid oak desk, the one I used to sit on as a kid, watching him draw blueprints. I pulled open the top left drawer, empty, just some paper clips and a dried-out pen. I pulled open the deep file drawer on the right. This was his sanctuary. This was where he kept everything. Tax returns going back 20 years, insurance policies, bank statements, his original will, our old mortgage papers. It was empty. Completely, utterly, clinically empty. She hadn't just taken the important papers. She had taken the bank statements, the checkbooks, the folder for the house, even the warranty for the damn printer. It was scoured, a digital age cleanup. She had erased any trace that his financial life had ever existed. I stood there in the silent room, the empty drawer gaping open like a grave. This wasn't a threat. This wasn't a family dispute. This was a heist, and it had been planned for a very, very long time. The 2 months that followed the funeral were a cold, gray fog. I threw myself into my work at Northbridge with a ferocity that bordered on self-destruction. I worked 12-hour days. I ran data models until my eyes blurred. It was the only place where logic applied, where cause and effect were real. At home, in my silent apartment, I was haunted by the image of that empty file drawer. Veronica, predictably, went quiet. There were no more calls, no more texts. It was a silence more threatening than her hisses. She was working. My father's partner, Harold Price, called me once. "Tinley," he'd said, his voice hesitant. "I'm hearing things from her lawyers, Merrill and Drake. They're telling people your father died with significant debts, that Veronica is liquidating her own assets to cover them. It just doesn't sound like Daniel. He was the most fiscally sound man I ever knew. He wasn't in debt. This was her next move. Claim insolvency, move his assets into her name to pay these fictitious debts, and leave an empty shell for me to sue." The anonymous text sat on my phone. Horizon Gate Legal Group. It felt like a risk. It could have been from someone playing a game, but after Harold's call, I knew I had no choice. I was out of my depth. I made an appointment. I used my lunch break on a rainy Wednesday. Horizon Gate was the opposite of Merrill and Drake's stuffy, old money reputation. Their offices were in a new glass and steel building. Their lobby was minimalist, and the lawyer who met me, Alicia Rowan, wore a sharp black pantsuit and running shoes. She looked like she ate men like Graham Cole for a light snack. "Tinley Charles," she said, shaking my hand. Her grip was firm. "I've got an hour. Talk." I laid it all out. The perfect stepmother, the Cold War, my father's declining health and spirit, the scene in the kitchen, the funeral, the family meeting, the threat, and finally, the empty desk drawer. She listened, her face unreadable, her pen never moving. When I finished, she was silent for a full 10 seconds. "Okay," she said, finally making a note on her pad. "First, let's establish a baseline. I spent 30 minutes this morning pulling your father's file at the Fairmont County Courthouse." I was stunned. "How did you know I was coming?" "I didn't," she said, tapping her screen. "The text you got? That was from my paralegal. His uncle is Harold Price. Harold has been worried about your father for months, and he asked my paralegal to keep an eye out for anything hinky regarding the Hale estate. Veronica's lawyers filed the original, pre-marriage will 2 days after your father died, but that's all they filed." "What does that mean?" "It means," Alicia said, leaning forward, "that if a new, updated will exists, like the one Harold mentioned, it must be filed with the probate court to be validated. It's a public document. Veronica's lawyers have not filed one. They have also not filed for a formal probate proceeding to begin, nor have they filed a preliminary inventory of assets. They are, in legal terms, slow-walking this, which is strange." "Why?" "2 reasons. Either they're incompetent, which I doubt, or they're trying to hide something. You mentioned the empty drawers. You suspect she's moving assets. I'd say that's a guarantee. She's likely trying to move money out of accounts in his name, transfer titles, sell off stocks. Before a judge can formally freeze the estate for inventory, she's creating her own set of facts on the ground. By the time we get a judge to look at it, she'll claim the money is all gone. Used to pay those debts Harold mentioned." A cold, hard rage settled over me. "So what do we do?" "We file, tomorrow," Alicia said, her voice turning to steel. "We file a petition to compel a full inventory and accounting of all assets. We contest her role as executor based on a clear conflict of interest and your reasonable suspicion of fraud. We will ask the judge to appoint a neutral third-party administrator to oversee the estate until this is settled. This will freeze everything. She won't be able to sell the house, touch his investments, or even access his safety deposit box without a court order." It was a total declaration of war. It was exactly what I needed. "Do it," I said. Alicia nodded. "Good. Now, you need to understand, the second we file this, her lawyers will be notified, she will be served, and she will react. She has already threatened to slander you. Be prepared for her to follow through." I was walking out of her office, my heart hammering with a terrifying mix of relief and dread, when my phone rang. It was her, Veronica. My thumb hovered over the decline button. "Wait," Alicia said, seeing my face. "Put it on speaker. Let's see what the opening salvo is." I answered the call and set the phone on the corner of her desk. Alicia leaned in. "Tinley?" Veronica's voice was a marvel. It was thick with tears. It was trembling, fragile. It was the voice of a heartbroken, terrified woman. It was a voice I had never, ever heard. "Hello, Veronica?" "Oh, Tinley, darling," she choked out a sob. I've been doing so much thinking. This silence between us, it's just killing me. Your father, he would hate this. He would just hate this." I said nothing. Alicia raised an eyebrow. I know I was difficult at the house," she continued, her voice catching. "I've just been so lost, so angry at the world for taking him, and I took it out on you. It was grief, Tinley, just horrible, ugly grief. Can you ever forgive me?" It was the most astonishing performance I had ever witnessed. I almost laughed. "What do you want, Veronica?" I just want to see you." She wept. "I know you have that. That big trip. The one for your promotion. I know your father was so proud of you for that. He talked about it for weeks. My daughter, the vice president. That's what he said. My throat tightened. That was a low blow, and it was a direct hit. I was thinking, and this is so silly, she said, her voice brightening with a fake, watery hope. What if I came to the airport to see you off, just to give you a hug, like he would have. I want to start over. I want to do this right before we bring lawyers and all that horrible, expensive mess into it. Please, Tinley, let's just talk for him before we bring lawyers into it. There it was, the tell. Alicia was looking at me, her expression deadpan. She slowly, deliberately, drew a circle in the air with her finger and then pointed at me. She's circling. She's trapping you. I don't know. Veronica, it's a work trip. It will just take 5 minutes. At your gate, B12, 9:30, isn't it? I'll be there. Please, honey, for your dad. She hung up before I could say no. I looked at Alicia. She knows about the trip. She knows the gate number. She knows I'm close to a promotion. She's been digging. Of course she has, Alicia said, closing her notebook. And she's terrified. We were right. She's moving assets, and she knows she's vulnerable. My filing the petition will be an atomic bomb. This is her last-ditch effort to stop it. She's going to offer you a deal, a quick, private settlement. She'll offer you a fraction of the estate in cash if you agree to walk away and not challenge her as executor. So I shouldn't go, I said. Alicia paused. No, I think you should go. But you're not going to be alone. My paralegal is 6'3" and looks like a linebacker. He'll be 50 feet behind you, filming. You go. You let her make her offer. And you say one sentence, and one sentence only. I'm afraid I can't discuss that. Veronica, my lawyer will be in touch. Then you get on your plane. Let her see that her little emotional games are over. That was the plan. It was a good plan. It was a solid plan. It lasted for about 90 seconds. The next morning, I arrived at Westbridge International. I was early. My suit was pressed. My presentation was loaded. My mind was clear. I was ready. I saw her standing near the entrance to the B concourse, and she wasn't alone. She had brought Elena. My stomach dropped. This wasn't a private peacemaking gesture. This was an ambush, with a hand-picked witness. Elena was the insurance policy. Elena was there to back up whatever story Veronica decided to spin. My plan to have Alicia's paralegal film suddenly felt cheap, and more importantly, useless. This was no longer a private negotiation. This was a public spectacle. I knew, in that instant, I couldn't just walk by. I couldn't just say, my lawyer will be in touch. That would, in her hands, become, I tried to reconcile, and she threatened me with lawyers. I had to confront her. I had to state my case, clearly, publicly, just once. I walked up to her. My roller bag clicking on the floor was the only sound. Veronica, I said. My voice was low, steady. I'm glad you're here. I was going to call you after this trip. All of this, it has to stop. Veronica's face was a mask of concern. Tinley, darling, what's wrong? You look so stressed. I am, I said, looking her dead in the eye. I am stressed because you cleaned out my father's office. I am stressed because I know you've been moving his assets. I am stressed because you threatened me. So I'm telling you now, I am hiring a lawyer. I am going to file for a full accounting of the estate. I am going to find out what you've done. I didn't get to finish. I saw her eyes change. The fake, watery grief vanished, and the cold, flat, reptilian gaze I'd seen at the funeral snapped into place. She had wanted a different scene. She had wanted to play the victim, to offer me a pittance, to have me refuse. My directness had ruined her script. So she improvised. The slap was a crack of thunder. My phone flew. My cheek exploded in pain. "You ungrateful bitch!" she screamed. And the scene I remembered from part 1 unfolded, but this time I understood it. It wasn't an outburst, it was a tactic. When her first plan, the fake reconciliation, failed, she pivoted to her backup: public destruction. The crowd gathered. The phones came out. Her accusations, leaving him to die. Chasing money, were not the babblings of a grieving widow. They were talking points. They were the precise, calculated narrative she had threatened me with. She was planting the seeds of my instability and greed for the entire world to see. And in the middle of that chaos, as I was reeling, trying to process the pain, the humiliation, I saw him. He was standing behind the Starbucks kiosk, not in the main circle. He was middle-aged, with a receding hairline, and he was not filming with a phone. He was taking notes, on a clipboard. He looked up, scanned the crowd, and I saw the laminated badge clipped to his belt. Westbridge International, Airport Risk Management. He was official, he was watching, he was documenting. My analytical mind, the one that had been beaten into silence, flickered to life. Data, evidence, a neutral third party. Then the airport security arrived. "Do you want to file a report for assault?" And Veronica's masterful next move. "She's not well. She's having a breakdown. She's delusional." She wasn't just slandering me. She was trying to get me committed. She was building a case that I was mentally incompetent. A person who is mentally incompetent cannot, after all, competently manage a legal challenge to an estate. And she was trying to get me detained. "Officer, check her ticket," she shrieked, grabbing the security guard's arm. "She shouldn't be allowed to fly. She's a danger to herself. You have to stop her." She wasn't trying to make me miss a meeting. She was trying to make me miss my life. She was trying to get an arrest, a police report, anything that would have the words Tinley Charles and unstable in the same official document. And Elena? My God, Elena. When the officer turned to her, a kind man asking, "Are you with either of these women, miss?" I saw her. I willed her. Just tell the truth. Just say, she hit her first. That's all. And that's when my cousin delivered the killing blow. She looked at the officer, her face pale, and whispered, I don't know them. I don't know what their family situation is." She didn't just stay silent. She lied. She denied me. She erased our entire shared history in one gutless sentence, and then she vanished into the crowd. She was not a hostage. She was a co-conspirator. I told the police it was a family matter. I walked away. On the plane, high over the Midwest, the cracked screen of my phone lit up. The videos were everywhere, but they were wrong. The gossip site's clip started after the slap. It showed my hand, pushing her away. It showed my face, red with rage and pain. It showed Veronica, sobbing, the perfect victim. The clips the other passengers had posted were the same, fragmented, chaotic, mostly focused on the shouting after the assault, the actual, initial, unprovoked attack. It was missing from almost every single one. And then, my phone rang. It was Alicia. "Tinley, what the hell just happened?" Her voice was not calm. "I'm looking at a video on the Westbridge Chronicle's website. They're saying you were detained at the airport for assaulting your stepmother. The comments. Tinley, they're calling you unhinged. Veronica's team is going to feast on this. They will use this to paint you as unstable, irrational, and completely irresponsible. They're going to argue you're not fit to manage a checking account, let alone an estate." I stared at the cracked screen. It all clicked into place. The call, the fake tears, the airport, the witnesses, the edited videos. It wasn't a fight. It was a perfectly executed character assassination, designed for an audience of one, the probate judge. And I had walked right into the trap. I leaned my head against the cold plastic of the airplane window. The throb in my cheek a dull, distant echo. The legal battle was one thing. I could analyze that. I could fight that. But a single, agonizing question burned through the fog, a question that had no logical answer, A question that hurt more than the slap, more than the public shame, more than the lost promotion. Why did Elena do it? What in God's name was she so afraid of that she would stand by and watch that, and then lie to protect the monster who did it? The week after the airport was a slow-motion public execution. The first call, the one that truly broke through my numb, angry shell, was not from a friend. It was from Janet, the head of human resources at Northbridge. "Tinley," she'd said, her voice dripping with that specific, corporate-mandated empathy that sounds like a lawsuit waiting to happen. "We're calling to check in. Obviously, we're so sorry to hear about your family situation." "My family situation?" I asked, my voice flat. "Yes, well, there's a video and a few articles. They're circulating, and, well, frankly, Tinley, the optics are challenging. We've had a few calls from shareholders. The board is concerned about your personal image. The promotion wasn't just gone. My career was now challenging." "I was assaulted, Janet." "Yes, well," she coughed. "The video we've seen, it's a bit ambiguous. It just, Tinley, we think it's best if you take some personal leave, paid, of course, just until this blows over, to, get your affairs in order. I was in quarantine. I was toxic." Then came the texts from friends. Not, "Are you okay?" but, "Oh my God, Tinley, what is this?" They sent me links. The Westbridge Chronicle's gossip blog, the Fairmont Daily's opinion section. The titles were all variations on a theme. Businessman's daughter mistreats deceased father. Local heiress's shocking airport meltdown. I spent the nights in the blue light of my monitor. My apartment silent save for the hum of the refrigerator. I scrolled. I read the comments. Hundreds of them. From people I had never met. Dissecting my life, my grief, my character. What a monster. I hope he left her nothing. She has a cold, dead face, just like a shark. Her poor stepmother, that woman is a saint. It was exactly as Veronica had planned. It was a second assault, a relentless digital stoning. I felt the same burning humiliation, the same paralysis, as I had on the terrazzo floor. Only this time, there were thousands of spectators, and they were all shouting. I methodically went through my accounts, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and set everything to private, then deactivated them. I erased myself. The silence from my family was the loudest noise of all. Not a single call from my father's side. My aunts, my uncles, the cousins I'd grown up with. Their silence was a verdict. They had seen the videos. They had heard Veronica's version of the story. And they had chosen a side. I was officially the cold daughter, the greedy monster. I was cast out. And Elena, there was nothing. No text, no blocked number call, no email, not a single word to explain why she had stood there, why she had lied. Her betrayal was a raw, infected wound, and her silence was the salt. By Friday night, I was done. I sat in my kitchen, a week's worth of unwashed coffee mugs in the sink, and stared at the cracked screen of my phone. Alicia Rowan had called. Of course, she was furious. "This is textbook defamation, Tinley, but it's also brilliant. She's poisoned the jury pool before we've even filed. We can still fight, but it's going to be harder." Harder. I didn't have harder left in me. I was tired. I was humiliated. My career was on fire. My family was gone, and my father was dead. What exactly was I fighting for? A house I didn't want? Money I'd never needed? I made a decision. I would call Alicia in the morning. I would tell her to drop the petition. I would let Veronica have it. The house, the stocks, the insurance money, all of it. I would trade my entire inheritance for the one thing I craved. Peace. I would let her win, just so I could be left alone. I felt a strange, hollow relief, a surrender. I was just about to pour myself a glass of wine to toast my own defeat when my apartment doorbell rang. It was 9:30 at night. I never have visitors. I froze. My first thought, instant and paranoid, was Veronica. I crept to the door, my heart hammering. I looked through the peephole. The hallway was empty, just the beige, institution-colored walls and the flickering fluorescent light. A kid in the next building was playing his music too loud. I waited. No one knocked again. I opened the door. Just a crack. The security chain still on. Nothing. Then I looked down. Pressed against the threshold was a plain brown paper envelope. No name, no address, no stamp. It had been hand-delivered. I undid the chain and picked it up. It was thicker than a standard letter, and heavier. It felt lumpy. My hands were shaking. This had to be a trap. Veronica. Sending me. What? More threats? Fake legal papers? I carried it into the kitchen and held it up to the light. I couldn't see anything. I slid it open with a steak knife, my movements jerky. Two things fell out onto the white kitchen counter. The first was a small, silver-colored key. It wasn't a house key. It was the cheap, thin kind. The kind you get for a padlock, or a small file cabinet, or a storage locker. The second was a piece of paper. It was a page torn from a spiral notebook, folded 4 times. I unfolded it. The handwriting was shaky, desperate, and utterly, achingly familiar. It was the same frantic, looping cursive that had filled dozens of birthday and Christmas cards throughout my childhood. Tinley, it read. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. It's time you knew the truth. Elena. My head spun. I leaned against the counter. This wasn't a trap from Veronica. This was a message from her hostage. My first instinct was a wave of pure, toxic anger. Sorry? Sorry for watching me be assaulted? Sorry for lying to a security officer? I almost threw the key in the trash, but there was a small, dark stain on the paper, near the signature. A single, warped spot, where a drop of water had hit the ink and made it run, or a tear. I flipped the paper over. There was more writing on the back, pressed so hard with the pen that the paper was embossed. Don't call. I can't talk. He's watching my phone. Just go to Maple Ridge Storage, Unit 12B, Saturday afternoon. Go alone. Tinley, please, alone. My mind raced. He's watching my phone. Not she. Who was he? I called Alicia. I took a picture of the note and the key and sent it to her. Her response was immediate. Don't go? Alicia. No. This is a classic trap. Tinley. Think. You're alone. Saturday afternoon. It's a setup. She'll have someone there. Maybe that he she's talking about. They'll film you breaking and entering a storage unit that isn't yours. Or they'll plant something. Or, God, they'll just have Veronica there to provoke you again. Only this time, she'll be the one with the hidden camera. Do not go. But the handwriting, I insisted. It's hers. I know it. And the place. Maple Ridge Storage. I've never heard of it. Veronica has never, ever mentioned it. She likes high-end climate control. This sounds like a cheap lockup. There was a pause on Alicia's end. Maple Ridge Storage. That's new? That's not in her profile. Okay, hold on. I heard her typing. It's a low-end place. Month to month. Cash payments accepted. That doesn't feel like Veronica's style at all. She likes a paper trail she can manipulate, not one she can't trace. We were both silent for a moment. So, I said, it's not her. It's something else. It's something, Alicia corrected, her voice still sharp with caution. But it's still a risk. You don't know what's in Unit 12B. It could be empty. It could be her old college textbooks. It could be a box of spiders. For all we know, don't get your hopes up. I don't have hopes, Alicia. I have a key. After I hung up, I stood in my kitchen for a long time. I picked up the small silver key. It was cold, anonymous. But as I turned it over in my palm, I saw it, on the bow, the part you hold. There was a tiny, barely visible set of numbers stamped into the metal. A serial code. This wasn't just a key for a cheap padlock. This was an official, issued key from the storage facility itself. This was a real, registered unit. A feeling I hadn't let myself have in months. A tiny, dangerous, electric spark flickered in my chest. I thought back. The last 2 years, my father, becoming more and more distant, but there were times he'd been gone for hours. Just running errands, he'd say. Paperwork. I'd always assumed he was just wandering, driving, lost in his fog. What if he wasn't? What if the man who taught me to build solid foundations had been building one? What if, in a moment of the clarity he'd lost at the end, he had done something? What if he'd realized he was trapped, and he had set aside a failsafe? A small, cheap, anonymous place Veronica would never, ever think to look. I walked into my bathroom and turned on the lights. The person in the mirror was a stranger. Her eyes were puffy and dark-ringed. Her skin was sallow. On her right cheek, faded but still visible under the harsh fluorescent light, was the greenish-yellow ghost of a bruise, the last remnants of Veronica's handprint. The girl in the mirror looked beaten. She looked like she was ready to surrender. And I hated her. I leaned in, my hands on the cold porcelain sink. I looked at the bruise. I would not let this be the end of my story. I would not let the final chapter be a gossip blog comment section. I would not let Veronica Hale and her staged airport drama be the final word on my father's life, or on mine. I didn't know what was in Unit 12B. Alicia was right. It could be nothing. It could be junk. But it was the only thing. It was the one thread that wasn't part of Veronica's narrative. The next afternoon, Saturday, the sky opened up. A cold, miserable rain poured over Westbridge. I walked out of my apartment building, pulling the collar of my trench coat tight. The rain hammered the pavement, and the 5 o'clock city lights blurred into a dull watercolor smear. I had the key in my coat pocket. My hand was wrapped around it so tightly my knuckles were white. It might be a trap, it might be nothing. But for the first time in a very long time, I wasn't running from something. I was walking toward it. Maple Ridge Storage was not a place Veronica Hale would have been caught dead in. It was not climate-controlled. It did not have an artisanal coffee bar in the lobby. It was a series of long, bleak, corrugated tin buildings, painted a depressing shade of beige, set behind a chain-link fence topped with barbed wire. The only amenity was a high-resolution security camera pointed at the rattling metal gate. It was cheap, anonymous, and, as I was about to find out, absolutely perfect. The rain from the city had followed me to the suburbs, and it hammered on the thin roof of the rental office, a small, prefabricated shed that smelled of wet carpet and stale cigarettes. A man in a stained fleece vest sat behind a metal desk, watching a basketball game on a tiny, buzzing television. "Can I help you?" he asked, not looking away from the screen. I have a key. For a unit," I said, my voice sounding weak, hesitant. "Right," he grunted. "Need the unit number and the key." 12B, I said. I slid the small, silver key across the desk. He picked it up, squinted at it, and then at me. "This ain't your unit," he said. It wasn't a question. It was my father's. He passed away. I'm his executor." It was a half-lie that tasted like acid, but it was the one I had to tell. "Right." He looked at the tiny serial number stamped on the bow, which I had correctly identified. "Got a name?" "Daniel Hale," I said. The man grunted again. He turned to his ancient beige computer, the kind that was probably running Windows 98, and typed, using only one finger. The keyboard clacked loudly in the small room. He stared at the screen. He clicked. He scrolled. "Daniel Hale, Unit 12B, he finally said. He looked at the screen for a long moment, then looked back at me, his gaze suddenly sharper, more curious. He paid up, in cash, for 2 years in advance. Contract started. Over a year ago, October 10th, 2024. My blood went cold. October 10th. Over a year ago. That was just 2 months after he and Veronica had returned from their second honeymoon in Italy. That was before the coughing had gotten bad. before he'd been pushed into retirement, before he'd become the ghost. This wasn't a deathbed precaution. This was a plan. The man tossed the key back to me. "Whatever's in there is yours, I guess. We're not liable for anything. You got till 6 o'clock. Gate auto locks at 6. Don't get stuck inside." I drove my car down the narrow, puddled lane, the metal buildings looming on either side. The numbers were spray-painted in black on the bright red. Roll-up doors. 9, 10, 11. 12B was at the very end of the row, in the darkest, most secluded corner. I got out of my car, the key cold and small in my trembling hand. The rain was letting up, but the air was heavy and damp. I stood in front of the door for a full minute, my heart hammering against my ribs. What if Alicia was right? What if this was a trap? What if I rolled up this door and Veronica was standing there, smiling? I put the key into the cheap, round padlock. It turned with a stiff, grinding click. I grabbed the metal handle at the bottom of the corrugated door. I pulled. It resisted, groaning, and then flew up with a crash, the sound echoing through the empty facility. I flinched, my eyes darting left and right. Nothing. No one. I stepped inside, my hand fumbling for a light switch. I found a simple pull cord, a single, bare bulb flickered to life, casting a weak, yellow glow. The smell hit me first. Not mold, not decay. It was the smell of my childhood, old paper, cardboard, and the faint, dry scent of my father's pipe tobacco. It was not a storage unit, it was an archive. It was immaculate. No haphazard piles, no discarded furniture. Against the back wall, there were 4 neatly stacked black filing boxes. To the left, a small fireproof safe, the kind you buy at an office supply store, and to the right, a single, folding canvas chair, sitting open, facing the wall, like a miniature, desperate office, a command center. He had been here. He had sat in that chair. I stepped closer to the wall above the chair. Taped to the metal with silver duct tape was a single, large sheet of drafting paper. It was a flowchart. My father, the architect, had drawn a map. It was a map of his own financial life, rendered in his precise, all-caps drafting hand. There were boxes labeled DH Main Checking, Verity Joint Account, U.S. Trust Investment Portfolio, and from these boxes, he had drawn arrows. Arrows pointing to boxes Veronica controlled. VH, Unknown ACCT1, VH, Verity Home Studio, LLC. And on the side, in red ink, was a series of handwritten notes. Contingency plan. If V leverages debt to seize assets, V has access to primary accounts, all transfers visible, secondary, shadow account needed, risk of psychological coercion, document everything. And then, one line, circled twice in red, possible power of attorney abuse. He knew. He hadn't been a ghost. He hadn't been a victim, not entirely. He had been a man, trapped in his own home, married to his abuser, and he had been quietly building a case against her. He had been an analyst, just like me. I turned to the first filing box, my hands shaking so hard I could barely unclip the plastic lid. It was labeled, Wills and Trusts. My stomach clenched. I dug inside, past old versions, past his original will from before he'd even met my mother. And then I found it. A thick blue-backed document from a law firm I didn't recognize. Gable and Stevens. It was a draft. The word draft was watermarked across every page. It was a new, updated last will and testament. I sank onto the concrete floor, ignoring the cold and damp, and I read, he hadn't disinherited her. That was the first, painful realization. He was still trying to be fair. The Maple Ridge house was left to Veronica, but with conditions, a life estate. She could live there, but she could not sell it. She could not mortgage it. Upon her death, or if she remarried, the house was to be sold, the proceeds split, 50% to me, 50% to a local architecture scholarship. And the rest, all of it, was for me. The investment portfolio, the life insurance policy, the one I thought she'd cashed out, all of it. I read a clause, and my breath hitched. And to my beloved niece, Elena, I leave a sum, to be held in trust for the completion of her university education, free from all outside influence or debt. He had tried to save her, too. Tucked inside the will was a thick, cream-colored envelope, the kind my father used for formal letters. On the front, in his beautiful, strong hand, was one word: Tinley. I broke the wax seal he had pressed into it, his initial, D.H. My hands were shaking so badly I tore the paper. My dearest girl, if you are reading this, it means I have failed. It means I ran out of time, and for that, Tinley, I am more sorry than I can ever write. I am sorry I was not strong enough. I am sorry I brought this woman, into our lives. You were always the strong one. I think I relied on that. I saw how capable you were, how you built your own life, and I leaned on you. I let you be the adult for both of us. That was my mistake, my failure as a father, and I have put you in a terrible position. You will find things in this locker, things that will make you angry, and things that will make you sad. Veronica, she has a sickness. She finds men who are weak, men who are lonely, men who are grieving, and she drains them. I see that now. I saw it in her eyes the day my firm was sold. She wasn't sympathetic. She was excited. She saw an opportunity. By the time I realized what she was, her roots were in everything. My bank accounts, my friendships, my home. I am trying to fix it. Tinley, I am building this ark, just in case. Everything in here is the truth. Everything in her house is the lie. Use the truth. Be the analyst. Be the strong girl I selfishly raised you to be. Do not let her win. I love you. I am so proud of you. Dad. I didn't realize I was crying until a tear hit the paper. Blurring the ink, I was sobbing. A deep, silent, racking sob in a cold tin storage unit. He had seen me. He hadn't been a ghost. He had been trapped. I wiped my face, my resolve hardening into something cold and solid, like steel. Be the analyst, he'd said. I got up. I went to the small, fireproof safe. It wasn't locked. I turned the handle. Inside was a nest of electronics, a small, black, portable hard drive, a single USB thumb drive, and a yellow sticky note stuck to the top. House camera, rolling backup, keep safe, last file, October 4th, the day before his stroke. He had backed up the security footage from the house. He had been documenting her comings and goings, her everything, the kitchen, the study, the living room. My mind flashed to that day. Me, kneeling by my father as he coughed. Veronica, in the kitchen, back to me, laughing on the phone. That was on this drive. I grabbed the drive and the USB stick. Underneath them was another envelope. This one was a plain, white business envelope, and it was marked Elena. I opened it. It wasn't a letter. It was a stack of credit card statements. 4 of them. 4 different cards. A Visa, a MasterCard, 2 high-end department store cards, all in the name of Elena, but the address was the Maple Ridge House. The statements were sickening. $5,000 at a jewelry store, $3,000 on a new laptop, $10,000 in home furnishings from Verity Home Studio. Stapled to the back was a letter from a collection agency. The accounts were delinquent. Elena, on her part-time salary, was in debt for over $30,000, debt that Veronica had clearly racked up in her name, then used as a leash. This was the he in Elena's note. It wasn't a man. It was the crushing, suffocating it, the debt, the legal exposure. Veronica hadn't just bought Elena's silence. She had manufactured a cage. My cousin hadn't just been a coward. She was a victim. Same as me. Same as my father. This was it. The motherlode. The proof of her financial abuse, her manipulation, her coercion. And then, at the very bottom of the safe, I found one last item. It was a letter, an appointment confirmation. It was from Horizon Gate Legal Group, the firm Alicia Rowan worked for. It was an appointment for my father, Daniel Hale. The subject was listed as Consultation, Marital Asset Protection and Spousal Abuse. The appointment date was October 5th, at 2 in the afternoon, the day after he died. He had been 1 day away. He had been 1 day away from meeting Alicia. He had been trying to hire the very same firm I had, the anonymous text, the name on the door. It hadn't just been a coincidence. It had been my father, reaching out from beyond the grave, pointing me in the only direction he could. I had it all. I had the will. I had the letter. I had the financial crimes against Elena. I had the hard drive. I was ready. I started to pack the boxes, my hands moving with purpose, my tears dry, my mind a cold, clear engine. I was zipping the hard drive into the inner pocket of my coat when my sleeve brushed against something pinned to the wall, just inside the door, almost hidden in the shadow. It wasn't part of the big flowchart. It was a single, folded piece of paper, tacked to the wall with a single, clear pushpin. It was a document, a field report. It was from Westbridge International Airport, Risk Management. It was dated February, 8 months ago. It detailed an uncontrolled passenger incident at Gate C-14. It described a middle-aged female, Caucasian, blonde, identified as Veronica Hale, who became verbally and physically aggressive with a gate agent who had told her bag was too large to carry on. The report was clinical. Subject Hale shoved gate agent and used profane language, causing a public disturbance. Law enforcement was called, but subject settled with airline staff prior to their arrival. Voucher issued. Subject was rebooked. My father had gotten this. He had somehow gotten a copy of a formal report detailing her previous public, violent, airport outburst. He was building a file. He knew this was a pattern. I looked at the report, and then I thought of the man I had seen. The man from Risk Management. The one with the clipboard. The one who had watched me. They didn't just rebook her. They knew her. And now, they had a new report. A new file. Only this time, the victim wasn't a gate agent. It was me. I was kneeling on the cold concrete, my father's letter clutched in my hand, the hard drive a solid, heavy weight in my pocket. I was an analyst, and I had just found the data set that would change everything. I was carefully placing the file boxes into a larger duffel bag I'd brought, my movements precise, when a sound made me freeze. A footstep, a soft, terrified scrape of a shoe on the pavement in the corridor outside. I dropped the box and scrambled to my feet, my heart leaping into my throat. I grabbed the only thing I could, the heavy metal padlock I had removed from the door. "Who's there?" I yelled, my voice embarrassingly shaky. A figure appeared in the rectangle of gray, rainy light. It was small, hunched, and soaking wet. "Tinley?" she whispered. It was Elena. She looked destroyed. Her face was bleach white, her eyes huge and red-rimmed. Her hair was plastered to her skull by the rain, and she was shaking, either from cold or from fear. She looked less like a co-conspirator and more like an escaped prisoner. "How did you find me?" I snapped, my voice hard. I didn't lower the padlock. I followed you. From your apartment," she stammered, hugging herself. I had to make sure you got it. I was so scared she'd somehow know." "You," I said, my voice dangerously low. "You watched me. You watched her hit me. And you lied to the police. You said you didn't know me." "I know," she burst out, and a raw, ugly sob tore from her throat. "I know. You think I don't see that every night? You think I don't hate myself? Frankly, Elena, I don't know what to think. She would have destroyed me. Tinley, right there," she cried, stepping into the locker, her eyes darting around at the boxes, the chair, the flowchart on the wall. "Oh my God," she whispered, her hand going to her mouth. He really did it. Uncle Daniel. He knew. What did you mean? He's watching my phone, I asked, my grip on the lock still tight. Not a the debt, she said, her voice cracking. She has everything. Tinley, she has my passwords. She checks my phone logs every night. She put a tracker on my car, the key. I had to walk to a payphone to call a cab to get to your apartment. I bought the envelope with cash. I was so scared. She saw the envelope marked Elena, sitting on top of the safe, the one I had already opened. Her face crumpled. You found them. $30,000 in fraudulent charges, I said, my voice like ice. Verity Home Studio, jewelry, you've been her personal mule. I didn't know, she insisted, tears streaming down her face. Not at first. She said she was helping me build my credit. She said she'd add me as an authorized user on a card. I was stupid, okay? I was stupid and broke. Then the bills started coming, and when I confronted her, she laughed. She said, well, your signature is on the application, darling. It looks like you're a thief. She said she had a friend, a lawyer, who was already looking into it. Merrill and Drake, I guessed. Elena's head snapped up. How do you know? They're not my father's lawyers. Elena, they're hers. And they're not just shady, they're criminal. They've been working on something for weeks, Elena whispered, wringing her wet hands. After Uncle Daniel died, she's been meeting with them to move the house, to get the title transferred only to her name, free and clear. She was trying to use my debt as leverage against his estate. She was going to claim he'd co-signed for me, that he was responsible, that the estate was broke, to wipe you out. It was brilliant, it was diabolical, and it would have worked. The airport, I said, the pieces clicking into place with a sickening snap. That wasn't just a threat, that was part two. Elena nodded, her body shaking. It was a 2-layer plan. She told me about it, not all of it, but I heard her on the phone with her lawyer. The first layer was what you saw, the public slander, to make you look greedy and cruel, to ruin your reputation. And the second layer? To make you look crazy, Elena whispered, her eyes wide. She was trying to provoke you. She wanted you to hit her back. She wanted you to be arrested. She told me. If she's mentally unstable, her testimony doesn't mean a thing. She was trying to build a case to have you declared incompetent. Tinley, to make it so you couldn't legally challenge her in court, ever. I leaned against the metal wall, the cold seeping through my coat. The slap, the security guards, the she's delusional, it all made a horrible, perfect sense. So you stood there, I said, my anger returning. You knew all this, and you lied. You left me there. She told me. Elena's voice rose to a shriek. She told me. If you say one word, if you even look at her the wrong way, I will call the police and I will show them these credit card bills. I will tell them you've been stealing from my dead husband's family. You will go to jail, Elena, and I will make sure you never, ever get out. What was I supposed to do? Tinley? What? I stared at her. My anger, so pure and hot a moment ago, began to curdle, replaced by a cold, sour pity. She was right. She was a different kind of victim. My father had been trapped by his own weariness. I had been trapped by my guilt. And Elena had been trapped by $30,000 of manufactured, weaponized debt. We were all his hostages, in different cages. She underestimated him, I said, quietly, gesturing to the flowchart. She underestimated my father. She underestimated you, Elena said, her voice small. Then, her eyes widened, as if she'd just remembered something. Oh God, wait, the other thing, the reason he knew, I have it. She fumbled in the pocket of her soaking wet jeans, her hands shaking. She pulled out a small plastic sandwich bag. Inside, folded into a tiny square, was a piece of paper. I still had access to his old email, she said, her teeth chattering. The one Veronica didn't know about, his old firm account. I checked it, after he died, before she could wipe it, and I found this. She deleted his whole inbox. But I printed this one. She handed me the bag. I opened it and unfolded the paper. It was a printed email. It was from the Westbridge Airport Risk Management Division, the same one from the report in my father's locker. To Daniel Hale. From Airport Risk Management, subject, Incident Report, C-14 to date, February 12, 2024. Mr. Hale, per your formal request and the filed police report, we are releasing the associated files for your records. Please find attached the full written report, as well as the complete, unedited security footage from Camera 12 and Camera 14, covering the entire duration of the incident at Gate C-14. We trust this resolves your complaint. My hands were shaking. This is the other attack, the one on the gate agent. Yes, Elena said, but don't you see? He didn't just get the report. Tinley, he got the video, and he got it by filing a formal complaint, a police report. He created a legal paper trail, which means, I finished, the words catching in my throat. There is a formal report, and there is a video of my attack, and that man with the clipboard, he was taking down every single word. We stared at each other. The rain hammered on the tin roof. We need to go, I said, my voice suddenly clear, sharp. The analyst was back. Right now. I zipped up the duffel bag, my father's entire secret life in one heavy canvas container. We're not going home. We're not going to your apartment. We are going to Alicia Rowan, right now. What about... Elena gestured at the empty locker. Leave it, I said. Let Veronica think it's still full. If she ever finds it, her ignorance is our new weapon. We ran through the rain. I didn't care that we were a spectacle. 2 women, one carrying a heavy lopsided bag, sprinting from a storage locker in a downpour. Alicia Rowan's office was closed on a Saturday, but her cell phone number, which she had given me, was not. I called her from the car. Alicia, it's Tinley. I found it. I found everything. The real will. The proof of financial abuse. I have my father's own words. And I have Elena. There was a half-second pause on the line. My office, she said, her voice losing all its prior caution and snapping into a tone of pure, predatory focus. 30 minutes. I'm calling in my probate litigator. We were buzzed into an empty, silent, billion-dollar office building. We dripped all over the Italian marble lobby. We took the elevator to the 42nd floor. Alicia was there, in jeans and a black blazer, looking like a general. With her was an older silver-haired man who radiated an energy so expensive and ruthless it made my teeth hurt. This is Marcus Cole, she said. He's the head of our Estates and Trusts division, the one your father had an appointment with. Marcus Cole didn't smile. He just nodded at me. I was sorry to hear I'd missed him, he said, his voice a low baritone. Let's make sure his time was not wasted. For the next 2 hours, in a glass-walled conference room overlooking the rain-lashed city, we laid it all out. We were no longer 2 scared women. We were witnesses. We were the prosecution. We spread the contents of the locker across the vast mahogany table. The flowchart, the draft will, my father's letter, the credit card statements, the hard drive, the USB stick, the report on the first airport attack, and finally, Elena's printed email. Alicia and Marcus were silent. They read, they absorbed, they processed. When I finally finished speaking, Marcus Cole leaned back in his chair. He looked at Alicia. This, he said, is not a probate dispute. This is a RICO case. What? I asked. Fraud, extortion, coercion, a pattern of financial abuse, Alicia said, her eyes gleaming with a terrifying, righteous fire. Veronica Hale wasn't just a bad wife, She was running a criminal enterprise. And Elena, you're not a co-conspirator. You're a material witness and a victim of extortion. So what's the strategy? I asked. The strategy, Marcus said, is total annihilation. We don't just file for an accounting. We file for an emergency injunction. We petition to have the court seize all assets. Pending a full criminal investigation, we'll have a forensic accountant tear her business and her life apart. We move first, Alicia added. And we move hard. We petition to have you, Tinley, installed as the temporary executor of the estate. Based on the clear, documented intent in this draft, we file an emergency motion for a restraining order, using the first airport assault report to establish a pattern of violence. And then, we subpoena the hell out of Westbridge International. We are going to get that full, unedited video of what happened at Gate B12. She looked at Elena, her voice softening for the first time. And for you, we are going to file a countersuit against Veronica for the full amount of that debt, plus damages for emotional distress and fraud. We are going to bury her in legal paper until she can't breathe. Alicia warned us. She warned us that this would be, in her words, a thermonuclear war. She said Veronica would stop at nothing. She would leak more lies. She would slander us in the press. She would drag my father's name through the mud. She said it would be the hardest, ugliest, most brutal fight of our lives. She pushed a stack of papers across the table. The first affidavits, the petitions. Are you in? She asked. I looked at Elena. Her face was still pale, but the shaking had stopped. She looked at me, and for the first time since we were children, her eyes were clear. She nodded, once. I picked up the pen. It was heavy, expensive. I clicked it. She picked the wrong analyst, I said. I signed my name. The ink was dark blue. From the 42nd floor, I could see the storm starting to break, the clouds moving out over the water. It was a declaration of war. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't just defending, I was attacking. The thermonuclear war Alicia had promised began on Monday morning. It did not start with a polite letter from her lawyers. It started with a grenade lobbed onto the front page of the Westbridge Chronicle's lifestyle section. The headline, next to a photo of Veronica looking wistful and heartbroken at a charity gala from 2 years prior, read, "Daughter sues grieving widow for father's fortune." The article itself was a masterpiece of character assassination, clearly dictated by Veronica and transcribed by a sympathetic, or perhaps just lazy, reporter. It quoted anonymous sources close to the family, who described me as distant, career-obsessed, and noticeably cold at my own father's funeral. It painted Veronica as a saint, a devoted wife who had nursed Daniel Hale through his long, difficult decline. It mentioned the airport incident only in passing, as a tragic, emotional outburst from my end. By 10 o'clock, it was worse. Veronica had deployed her actual weapon, Graham Cole. He was a lawyer whose face was on billboards all over the city, usually pointing an accusatory finger under the words, "Injured? Get paid." He appeared on Good Morning Westbridge, his face a mask of solemn, professional concern. "We're not here to disparage Miss Charles," he said, his voice oozing false sympathy. "Brenda, we are talking about a young woman who is clearly, deeply, emotionally unbalanced by her grief. This isn't a lawsuit. It's a cry for help. Her father's passing was tragic, and she's lashing out. All Veronica Hale wants, all she has ever wanted, is to protect Daniel's legacy and help her stepdaughter heal." By noon, the social media campaign was in full swing. An anonymous Instagram account, Maple Ridge Insider, had sprung up overnight. It posted a beautiful filtered photo of Veronica in her garden, kneeling by her roses, the picture of a graceful widow. The caption was, "Venom. So disgusted. I have known this family for years. Veronica nursed Daniel every single day of his final year. His daughter showed up once a month, if that, always on her phone. Now this monster wants to steal the house her father built for his wife. Some people have no souls." The comments were a feeding frenzy. I was a vulture, a sociopath, a disgrace. The first call from my family came at 1 o'clock. It was my father's brother, Uncle Mark. I had not spoken to him in 6 months. "Tinley," he barked. No hello. "What the hell are you doing? Airing this family's dirty laundry all over the papers? Your father would be ashamed of you." "Uncle Mark, you don't understand. I understand that she's a good woman who loved my brother." He cut me off. "She took care of him when no one else, you included, was around. You need to drop this. You are embarrassing the Hale name." I hung up the phone, my hand shaking. Then it buzzed. A text. From my cousin, his daughter. "Don't listen to him. He's an idiot. We all see what she is. Go get her. Tinley, just don't tell my dad I texted you." My family was splitting down the middle, a fault line opened by Veronica's lies. The public, who only saw the surface, had chosen her. Those who knew, even a little, were forced to hide in the shadows, sending me secret messages of support. The second call was from Janet at Northbridge. "Tinley," she said, her voice strained. "The board needs to see you. Tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock. I walked into that sterile boardroom feeling like I was walking to my own execution. Janet was there, and so were the 3 senior partners I was supposed to be presenting to for my vice president promotion. The promotion that was now a distant, laughable memory. "Tinley," Janet began, fumbling with a pen. "The board is deeply concerned. The optics of this lawsuit, combined with the incident at the airport, it reflects poorly on Northbridge's image." I stood up straight. "Janet, what you are reading about is a slander campaign. I am not suing my stepmother. I am petitioning the court to investigate the executor of my father's estate for criminal fraud, extortion, and financial abuse. I have evidence. This is not a family squabble." A man at the end of the table, Mr. Davies, a senior partner I'd never spoken to, looked up from his tablet. "Fraud and extortion?" he asked, his voice quiet. "Yes, sir. My stepmother has been systematically moving my father's assets, under her lawyer's guidance, into her own accounts. She is attempting to defraud me of my inheritance and is simultaneously slandering me in the press to have me declared an unstable party." Davies was quiet for a long moment. He looked at Janet. "My first wife's family tried to pull this exact thing when my father-in-law passed," he said, his voice flat. "It was ugly. They had his doctor declare him senile and tried to loot the estate before his body was cold." The room went silent. He looked back at me. "Janet, this is Miss Charles's private legal matter, not a performance review. Northbridge will, of course, remain neutral. We will not be influenced by gossip blogs." He looked at me, his eyes not warm, but not unkind. "Tinley, we expect you to continue to handle your affairs with discretion. Your paid leave is still in effect. We will reevaluate your position when this matter is concluded." I walked out of the building. It was not support. It was not a termination. It was a cold, corporate reprieve. I was on my own. Alicia's office had become our war room. We were there that afternoon. Me, Alicia, Marcus Cole, and a very, very pale Elena. "You are dark," Alicia ordered, pacing in front of the glass wall. "You do not talk to the press. You do not talk to your uncle. You do not even text your supportive cousin back. Everyone is a potential witness for her. From now on, you are a ghost. We speak only through our court filings." She turned to me. "Marcus and I will handle the legal motions and the press. You are an analyst. So, analyze." She dropped a thick bound stack of papers on the table. "These are the preliminary bank statements Harold Price provided. This," she pointed to the hard drive I'd recovered, "is your real homework. Go through every file, every video, every document. I want you to find the pattern. Our forensic accountants are good." "But they didn't know your father's habits." "You do. Find the transaction she thought was small enough to hide." Elena, who had been twisting a paperclip, finally spoke. She's calling me," she whispered, her eyes wide with terror. "Leaving voicemails. You've made a terrible mistake, Elena. You're going to jail. You're a thief. And I have proof. She texted me a picture of the front of the Fairmont police station. Good, Alicia said, not even pausing. Good? Elena squeaked. It's called witness tampering. Elena, it's a felony, and she's doing it over text, like an amateur. Forward every single message to me. You are under my protection now. The affidavit you signed detailing her coercion and the $30,000 of debt she forced on you, that is your shield. She's the one who committed the fraud. You're just the one who's going to testify to it. Alicia's phone rang. She looked at the caller ID, and her thin lips twitched. Harold, what a pleasant surprise. She put him on speaker. Alicia, love. Harold Price's warm, rumbling voice filled the room. Just wanted to let you know I signed that affidavit. I'll testify under oath, in front of God and everyone, that Daniel told me, not 6 weeks before he passed, that he was changing his will specifically to protect Tinley from that woman's spending. He told me he wanted to make sure his girl, his real girl, got everything he'd worked for. Alicia's smile was a thin, terrifying, beautiful thing. Harold, you're a saint. Nah, he grunted. I'm just a man who hates a thief. He hung up. Alicia looked at me. Her grieving widow narrative just took a cannonball to the chest. The next 3 days were a blur. I lived in my apartment, curtains drawn, analyzing the data. I found the video, the one of my father coughing in the living room, the one of Veronica in the kitchen, back to the camera, laughing. 60%. Her voice, clear as a bell, echoed in my silent apartment. And she agreed. I saved it. On Friday, the email came from the court. The Fairmont County Courthouse had scheduled our preliminary hearing. In the matter of the Hale estate, 1 week, Alicia said over the phone. Next Tuesday, this is it. This is the hearing for the temporary injunction to freeze every penny. She knows it's coming. She's going to get desperate. The desperation arrived on Sunday night. I was cross-referencing my father's bank statements with the credit card bills he'd saved in the locker, proving that Veronica had been using his business account to pay for her personal Verity home studio expenses. My email pinged. The sender's name made my blood run cold. Veronica Hale. The subject line was just 2 words. Let's end this. I opened it. It was a novel of manipulation. Tinley. My heart is broken, not by what you're doing, but by what I know you must be feeling. You're in so much pain, and I know you're confused. You're lashing out. My lawyer, Graham, he says I should fight you. He says I should show the court proof of your instability, your breakdown at the airport. He says I should tell them about your rages, but I can't. I won't. You are Daniel's daughter. This is killing his memory. So, I'm offering you a way out. For him. Drop this horrible, public lawsuit. Just walk away. Let your father rest in peace. In return, I will give you a gift from me. $100,000, just to help you start fresh, to get the help you need. And I will promise to never, ever tell a soul about the problems you've been having. We can keep your condition private. My hand was shaking, but not from fear. It was from a rage so pure and so cold it was almost serene. She was offering me a $100,000 bribe to buy my silence about my own instability, the instability she had manufactured. It was a trap, it was a threat, and it was the last piece of evidence I needed. I did not reply. I did not delete. I clicked forward. I typed in Alicia's email address. In the subject line, I wrote, FWD, let's end this. In the body, I wrote, more evidence. This is textbook blackmail. I hit send. I realized I was smiling. She still thought she was dealing with the emotional, grieving child she'd slapped at the airport. She had no idea she was about to face an analyst who had just logged the final, damning piece of data. That night, I turned on the local news. The reporter was standing outside the Maple Ridge house, the porch light glowing. And in this tragic family dispute, the grieving widow, Veronica Hale, had no comment today, though she remains a figure of grace and strength. The camera showed Veronica, standing on her porch. She was in a tasteful black dress. She was holding a single white rose, and she dabbed her eye with a silk handkerchief. A perfect, suffering saint. But the cameraman, probably unintentionally, panned just a little too far to the left. For just 1 second, through the open front door, the foyer was visible. In the foyer was a stack of cardboard shipping boxes, and on the top box, scribbled in thick, black marker, were 3 words: "For sale docs, urgent." She was still shredding. She was still liquidating. She thought she had time. "She's wrong," I whispered to the empty room. "The hearing is Tuesday." The air in courtroom 3B of the Fairmont County Courthouse was thick and still, smelling of old wood, floor wax, and the faint, sour odor of human anxiety. It was not a grand courtroom, not the kind you see on television. It was a practical, working room, with beige walls, fluorescent lighting, and scuffed oak benches. It was a place where small, sad lives were dissected every day. And now, it was our turn. I sat at the petitioner's table, my back so straight I felt it might snap. I wore my simplest, most nondescript navy blue suit. It was armor. Beside me, Alicia Rowan was a study in lethal calm. Her files arranged in 3 precise, geometric stacks. Behind us, in the front row, sat Elena, pale but resolute, and Harold Price, his kind face set in a determined grimace. Across the aisle, at the respondents' table, sat the enemy. Veronica was a vision in a perfectly tailored black sheath dress, a single strand of pearls at her throat. She had, as I'd expected, artfully applied her makeup to make her eyes look puffy, swollen with grief. Her hair was pulled back in a severe, elegant chignon. She was the picture of the wronged, suffering widow. Beside her, Graham Cole, her billboard lawyer, looked like a shark poured into a $2,000 suit. He was all tan, white teeth, and aggressive cologne. He exuded a confidence that was so total, so absolute, it was almost suffocating. He leaned over and whispered something to Veronica, and she gave him a small, tragic smile. It was a performance for the judge. The Honorable Judge Marian Al-Jamil, a woman in her 60s with a face that looked like she'd seen everything and been impressed by none of it, entered. We all rose, we all sat. "We are here," Judge Al-Jamil said, her voice a dry rasp, "on the matter of the Hale estate, petition to compel accounting and to remove the executor. I have read the preliminary motions. They are explosive." She looked down at Graham Cole. "Mr. Cole, your client is the respondent. You may begin." Graham Cole rose, smooth as silk. He clasped his hands in front of him, a posture of humble reason. "Your Honor," he began, his voice a rich, reasonable baritone that probably swayed juries by the dozen. "We are not here today to contest a will. We are here, sadly, because of a tragedy. Not just the tragedy of Daniel Hale's passing, a wonderful man, a devoted husband, but the tragedy of his daughters, emotional distress." He gestured to me, not with malice, but with a look of deep, profound pity. My client, Veronica Hale, was her husband's sole caregiver for the last 2 years of his life. He was lying, already, on the first sentence. She nursed him, she loved him, she was, as Mr. Hale told many, many people, his rock, Miss Charles, he said, turning my name into an accusation. Was distant, by her own admission. She is a very busy, career-focused woman living in the city. She was, sadly, estranged. "Objection," Alicia said, her voice a flat, boring monotone. "Hearsay and mischaracterization." "Sustained," the judge rasped, without looking up. "Get to the point. Mr. Cole, the petition alleges serious financial misconduct." "Which is exactly the fantasy, Your Honor," Cole said, not missing a beat. There is no misconduct. There is only a grieving daughter, lashing out, who has now appeared to claim assets. She is attempting to undo her father's wishes, which were to have his loving wife, my client, manage his estate. He then walked to the clerk and submitted his first exhibit. To illustrate the instability of the petitioner, Your Honor, we submit Exhibit A, a series of video clips taken from a public forum, just 1 week ago. A screen on the wall flickered to life. My stomach turned to acid. It was the airport, but it was his version of the airport. The clips were short, chaotic, and perfectly edited. They showed me, my face red and contorted, shoving Veronica's hand away. They showed me yelling, "Let go of me!" They showed her, sobbing, collapsing into the arms of a bystander. There was no sound, just the grainy, damning footage. The slap? It was gone. The initial assault? It had never happened. In this version, I was, without question, the aggressor. I was the monster. A low murmur went through the small gallery. I could feel the eyes of the court reporter, the clerk, the bailiff, all on me. I felt the heat rising in my neck, the same burning humiliation. My throat was sandpaper. "As you can see, Your Honor," Graham Cole said, his voice dripping with sorrow, "this is not the behavior of a stable, responsible individual. This is a person in the throes of a rage, attacking her grieving stepmother in a public place. We believe this pattern of instability is what is driving this entire frivolous and deeply painful lawsuit." He sat down. The silence in the room was a physical weight. Veronica dabbed her eye with a black-edged handkerchief. She had won the first round. I looked at Alicia. She was perfectly still. She didn't look at me. She just placed one hand on my arm, her grip firm. "Wait. Ms. Rowan," the judge said, her voice heavy with disapproval. "Your response to this?" Alice CIA stood. She was not a performer. Like Cole, she was a surgeon. "Your Honor," she said, her voice clear and cold. "Mr. Cole is correct about one thing. This case does hinge on what happened at the Westbridge International Airport, but he has submitted a highlight reel, sourced from a gossip blog." She walked to the clerk. "We, on the other hand, have the full, unedited, official security footage subpoenaed from the Westbridge Airport Risk Management Division. It is file-stamped by their internal systems. We would like to play Exhibit B." Graham Cole's head snapped up. His smile flickered. "Your Honor, that's redundant. We've seen—" "I will see the official footage. Mr. Cole," the judge snapped. "Play it." The screen changed. The grainy, chaotic phone clips vanished. They were replaced by a high-definition, wide-angle, black-and-white shot from a camera high on the ceiling. There was a timestamp in the corner. There was no sound, but there was no need for sound. The video was chillingly clear. It showed me, standing there, talking. It showed Veronica, her face contorted. It showed her, drawing back her arm, a full 90-degree wind-up, and striking me across the face. A collective, audible gasp went up from the gallery. The judge, who had been leaning back, sat bolt upright in her chair. The video continued. It showed me, staggering back, my hand to my face. It showed Veronica grabbing the lapel of my coat. It showed her, screaming, her face a mask of pure rage. It showed me, only then, grabbing her wrist, trying to pry her fingers off me, backing away. It showed her, lunging at me again, before security arrived. The entire courtroom was silent. I could hear Graham Cole's breathing. Alicia hit the remote. The image froze on Veronica's face, mid-shriek. "That, Your Honor," Alicia said, her voice cutting through the silence, "is the grieving widow, the sole caregiver who was nursed by her husband. Mr. Cole calls my client's petition a fantasy. We call his opening statement perjury." The air had been sucked from the room. Judge Al-Jamil stared at the frozen image, her face granite. She turned her gaze, slowly, From the screen to Veronica, it was the coldest look I have ever seen. Veronica was white, not pale, white. The makeup on her eyes began to look clownish, her feigned sorrow vanishing to reveal the raw, naked fury beneath. Graham Cole was on his feet, sputtering. "Your Honor, this is an isolated incident, a moment of profound, understandable grief. It means nothing. It doesn't prove financial." "It proves," Alicia interrupted, her voice a whip, "that your client is a liar. It proves she is violent. It proves she is willing to assault my client in a public place and then submit edited footage to this court to lie about it. It establishes a pattern of abuse and duplicity that goes directly to her fitness as an executor." "Now," Alicia said, turning back to the clerk, "let's talk about the finances. We'd like to submit Exhibit C, D, and E." She placed the items from the locker on the table. My father's flowchart, the draft of his will, and his final, heartbreaking letter. "Exhibit C, Your Honor, is a financial flowchart, in the deceased's own hand, recovered from a private storage locker he maintained, unknown to his wife." "Objection!" Cole shouted. "Provenience! We have no idea where this—" "It will be authenticated by a handwriting expert, Mr. Cole, as will Exhibit D, a draft of a new will, prepared by a different firm, which leaves the bulk of the estate to my client, and Exhibit E, a letter, from the deceased to my client, dated just 3 weeks before his death, in which he states, and I quote, 'She, Veronica, she has a sickness. She finds men who are weak, and she drains them.' By the time I realized what she was, her roots were in everything, my bank accounts, my home." A ripple of shock went through the courtroom. Harold Price let out a low, "Amen." Judge Al-Jamil looked at Veronica. "Mrs. Hale, were you aware that your husband maintained a private storage locker at the Maple Ridge storage facility?" Veronica, for the first time in her life, was cornered. I could see her mind racing, calculating the lie. No, Your Honor," she stammered, placing a trembling hand on her pearls. I can't imagine. He was so confused at the end. He must not have known what he was doing." "Is that so?" Alicia said, a thin, cruel smile on her face. "Your Honor, the petitioner calls Elena's name." She stood up from the gallery, her hands shaking, and walked to the stand. "Miss," Alicia said, her voice suddenly gentle, "please tell the court, did your Aunt Veronica ever mention self-storage facilities to you?" "Objection!" Cole roared. "Irrelevant! Hearsay!" "Overruled!" the judge snapped. "Answer the question, child." Elena looked at Veronica. Veronica was staring at her, her eyes 2 burning coals, a look of pure, murderous hatred. "Don't you dare!" Elena turned back to the judge. She took a deep breath. "Yes," she said, her voice shaking, but clear. She did. When I was running errands for her, she told me to stay away. She said, and I remember the words, she said, 'If I ever find out you've been snooping around any self-storage near the house, I'll know you're a thief, and you'll regret it for the rest of your life.'" The courtroom was silent. Graham Cole didn't just look defeated, he looked embarrassed. He had been played. His own client had lied to him. He had to know it. He had to know that his admission, moments ago, that he hadn't known about the locker, now looked like he was complicit in hiding it. His credibility was shot. Alicia Rowan stepped into the center of the room, facing the judge. She was no longer a surgeon. She was a closer. "Your Honor," she said, "we have established a clear pattern, a pattern of violence, as seen on the video, a pattern of slander, as seen in the edited clips her lawyer dared to submit, a pattern of coercion, as Miss Elena has just testified, and a clear run, premeditated attempt to defraud this estate and this court. We have a letter from the deceased himself, fearing for his life and his assets. We have the proof of her blackmailing my client. offering a $100,000 bribe in exchange for dropping this suit. We have proof she is actively trying to destroy documents. She held up the photo from the news, the one of the box in the foyer. For sale docs, urgent. She is not a grieving widow, Your Honor. She is a predator, and she is liquidating this estate as we speak. We are petitioning for an immediate, emergency injunction to freeze every single asset in Daniel Hale's name, and every asset in Veronica Hale's name that can be reasonably traced to him. We petition to have her removed, immediately, as executor, and my client installed, per the clear intent of the deceased. We ask that the court appoint a forensic accountant, at the estate's expense, to find every single dollar she has stolen. She stood there, radiating pure, righteous fury. Graham Cole rose, but he was a beaten man. Your Honor, this is all circumstantial. It's a family drama. Mr. Cole, Judge Al-Jamil said, her voice dangerously quiet. Shut up. She looked at her papers. She looked at the frozen image on the screen. She looked at Veronica, whose face was now a rigid, terrifying mask of hate. The court, the judge said, will take a 1-hour recess to consider the motion for the preliminary injunction. She banged her gavel. The second she was off the bench, Veronica rounded on Graham Cole. She was whispering, but her voice was a low, vicious hiss that I could hear from 10 feet away. You useless, incompetent fool, she spat. You told me they had nothing. You told me this would be easy. Mrs. Hale, please, he said, gathering his papers, his tan face slick with sweat. She wasn't looking at him. She was looking at me. Across the aisle, her eyes locked with mine. Her face, her real face, was finally revealed. The mask was gone. All the charm, all the grace, all the feigned victimhood had burned away, leaving only a core of pure, unadulterated, bottomless spite. She didn't have to say a word. Her eyes made a promise. This is not over. I will burn you to the ground. An hour later, the courtroom refilled. The air was electric. My hands were freezing. Elena was sitting next to me now, her hand gripping mine. All rise. We stood. We sat. Judge Al-Jamil looked down at all of us. Her face was grim. I have reviewed the motions, she said, her voice echoing in the silence. I have reviewed the exhibits submitted by the petitioner. I have watched the video evidence, and I have read the letters from the deceased. She paused. The entire room held its breath. It is the opinion of this court, she said, her eyes finding Veronica, that I have read and seen enough to make an initial determination. She looked down at her papers, as if gathering her thoughts for the final, brutal blow. The silence stretched. The clock on the wall ticked. Tick, tock. My heart hammered in time. This was it. The moment of the kill. The judge's words. I have read and seen enough. Hung in the air. The clock on the wall seemed to be ticking backward. But Judge Al-Jamil, in a move of pure judicial theater, held up a hand. But I will not make my determination on this motion today, she said, silencing the room. The evidence submitted is extensive and, frankly, deeply disturbing. I am continuing the preliminary hearing until Monday next, at 10 a.m., at which point I will rule on the emergency injunction and the removal of the executor. Until then, no one touches anything in this estate. Do you understand me, Mrs. Hale? It was a temporary freeze. It was a warning. It was, as Alicia later called it, giving Veronica enough rope to hang herself. The weekend was agonizing. We had shown our hand. Veronica knew about the locker. She knew we had the draft will. She knew we had Elena. We were braced for her counterattack, for her to double down on the unstable narrative, to produce fake doctors, to do something. Instead, silence. Until Sunday night, 24 hours before the hearing. Alicia's phone rang. My phone rang. We were in her office, prepping. It was an email. Not from Veronica. Not from Graham Cole. It was from a burner. Anonymous email address, a Proton Mail account. The subject, the Hale Estate, the real will. Alicia opened it. "My God," she whispered. It was from a paralegal, a former paralegal, as of 2 days ago, at Merrill and Drake. "I cannot, in good conscience, let this happen." The email read, "I was the one who processed Mr. Daniel Hale's final documents. He did come in. He did sign his final will. He was lucid. He was clear. And he was insistent. He signed it on October 4th. 2 witnesses. It was notarized. He paid in full." My heart stopped. October 4th, the day before his stroke, the day before his appointment with Horizon Gate. He had been trying to lock it down from 2 different directions. After he died, the email continued, Veronica Hale and Graham Cole met with Mr. Merrill. They pressured the firm to hold the will, to not file it. They claimed it was invalid, that he was senile. They paid a discretionary fee of $20,000 to the firm to make the problem go away. I was told to bury it, to lose the file. I have been sick over it for months. I quit on Friday. I am attaching a full, high-resolution scan of the entire executed document, including the witness signature page. Do what you will with it. Alicia clicked the attachment, and there it was. It was not a draft. It was a scanned, 16-page document. My father's strong, familiar signature was at the bottom of every page. Daniel J. Hale, and at the end, the signatures of 2 witnesses, the paralegal, and another lawyer at the firm, and the purple, embossed stamp of a notary. It was ironclad. It was the ark my father had been building. And the terms were exactly what he'd drafted, the house to Veronica, but only as a life estate, with the condition that I was co-signatory on any repairs or changes the moment she tried to sell it, or mortgage it, or cohabitate with a new partner. It reverted to the estate. All remaining assets, the investment portfolios, the insurance policies, the cash accounts, were to be placed in a trust. For me, and for Elena, a separate educational fund, just as he'd written. Alicia looked up from the screen. Her face was not triumphant. It was cold. It was the face of an executioner. "They're not just disbarred," she said, her voice quiet. "They're going to prison." The next morning, the courtroom was a circus. The press was there, alerted by Graham Cole, who clearly expected to spend the day painting me as a lunatic. Veronica was back, in a new, even more mournful black dress. Judge Al-Jamil entered. "Ms. Rowan, Mr. Cole, before I rule on the preliminary motion, has any new evidence come to light you wish to submit?" Graham Cole smirked. "No, Your Honor. The respondent stands by her position." "The petitioner," Alicia said, standing up, "is grateful for the opportunity. Your Honor, we have, in fact, received the final, executed, and witnessed last will and testament of Daniel Hale, dated October 4th. The blood drained from Graham Cole's face. His tan seemed to turn green. Your Honor, that's impossible. It's a fabrication." "Is it?" Alicia asked, handing the printed, scanned document to the clerk. "Then you will have no objection to our calling your former associate from Merrill and Drake, who is currently with the district attorney's office, to testify as to how you and your client paid a $20,000 bribe to have this document buried." Graham Cole sat down, hard. He looked, for the first time, like a man who was calculating his own billable hours in terms of prison sentences. Veronica, next to him, was shaking, not with fear, with pure, unadulterated rage. She was staring at me, her mouth a thin, white line. It was over in less than an hour. The judge read the will. She read the whistleblower's affidavit. Her ruling was brutal. "It is the judgment of this court," she declared, her voice ringing with contempt, "that the will dated October 4th is the true and final testament of Daniel Hale. It is hereby validated and entered into the record." She looked at Veronica. "The preliminary injunction to freeze all assets is no longer temporary. It is made permanent. A court-appointed administrator will be assigned today to seize control of all accounts, those of the deceased and those of Mrs. Veronica Hale, pending a full forensic investigation to trace every dollar that was fraudulently transferred. She wasn't done. Mrs. Hale, you are removed as executor. Effective immediately, the court appoints the petitioner, Ms. Tinley Charles, as the sole executor, per her father's wishes. You are ordered to vacate the Maple Ridge property within 30 days, at which point Ms. Charles will take possession of it, subject to the conditions of the will. Furthermore, she said, her eyes finding Graham Cole, who looked like he was about to be sick. This court finds the actions of the respondent, her legal counsel, and the firm of Merrill and Drake to be so far beyond the pale of the law as to warrant criminal review. I am referring this entire case, the fraudulent credit card statements, the witness tampering, the bribery, and the obstruction of a valid will, to the district attorney's office for a full criminal investigation. In the back row, a man in a quiet suit, one I hadn't noticed before, stood up and briefly nodded at the judge. He was from the DA's office. He had been there the whole time. Finally, the judge looked at Elena. As for the matter of the $30,000 in debt, this court rules those debts null and void, as they are the clear and obvious product of extortion and identity theft. The court will issue a formal judgment to that effect, protecting Miss from all creditors. Elena burst into silent, ragged sobs of pure relief. It was a total, clean, absolute victory. We walked out of the courthouse into a swarm of cameras. The narrative, as it always does, had flipped. The story had changed. When we had walked in, I was the greedy daughter, now, with the official airport video having been leaked to the press by Alicia's team. I was the victim. Veronica was the villain. Miss Charles, how does it feel? Mrs. Hale, do you have a comment on the criminal investigation? Veronica, her face a mask of thunder, pushed through the crowd. Graham Cole was gone, having slipped out a side door, no doubt to call his own lawyer. She grabbed my arm. Her grip was like a talon. Tinley, she hissed, her voice a low, desperate venom. She was trying to smile, for the cameras, but it was a horrible, stretched grimace. Tinley, please, don't. You can't. I was a mother to you. I did it. I did it all because I was afraid. Afraid of losing everything. You have to understand. I looked at her, at this pathetic, desperate woman, her life's work of lies collapsing around her in a public square. All my fear, all my anger, it was gone. I just felt empty. I pulled my arm free from her grasp, slowly, deliberately. No, I said, my voice quiet, but clear enough for the microphones. A mother doesn't do what you did. A mother doesn't slap her daughter in an airport. A mother doesn't steal. You are not my mother. You are nothing. I turned, and with Alicia on one side and Elena on the other, I walked away. The next few weeks were a blur of legalities. The court administrator, a stern woman with a sharp pencil, was ruthless. She clawed back Veronica's assets. She seized the Verity home studio, which turned out to be almost entirely funded by my father's stolen accounts. Veronica Hale, the queen of Maple Ridge, was left with nothing but a criminal indictment and the clothes on her back. I was given a key, a real key, from the court, to the Maple Ridge house. I stood in the living room. The court administrator had already had all of her furniture, the cold, minimalist, expensive junk, removed and auctioned. The house was empty. It was hollow. It echoed. It smelled faintly of bleach. I stood by the window, in the spot where my father's old armchair used to be. The late afternoon sun streamed in, illuminating the dust motes. On the mantel, there was only one thing left, a small, silver-framed picture of my father and me, when I was 10, on a fishing trip. He was smiling, a real smile. The doorbell rang. It was Elena. She was different. Her hair was cut. She was wearing a bright yellow sweater. She wasn't shaking. She was smiling. "Hey," she said. "Hey," I smiled back. "Come on in." We stood in the vast, empty kitchen, the one where Veronica had laughed. It was just a room now. "So," Elena said, "this is weird." "It's just a house," I said. I wanted to say thank you," she said. "Again, for everything, for saving my life. We saved each other's, I think, and," she said, "I wanted to give you something." She held up a single, brand new, shiny brass key. "What's this?" I asked, confused. "It's the key to my new apartment," she said, her voice bright with a pride I had never heard. "A one-bedroom studio, downtown. The deposit and first month's rent were just paid, in full, by the Elena Hale Educational Trust Fund." We looked at each other, and for the first time in what felt like a lifetime, we both laughed, a real, honest, fearless laugh, in a house that had been silent for too long. I stood in that empty house for a long time after she left. I thought about the keys. The first key, the one Elena had risked everything to give me, had been small, silver, and cold. It had opened a storage locker. It had opened the past. It had unlocked the truth my father had hidden, the truth that gave me the weapons I needed. This second key, the one I had just helped give to her, was brass, and warm, and new. It opened a future, a door to a life she owned. I walked out of the front door of the Maple Ridge house. I pulled it shut behind me. The click of the latch was loud and final. I slid the deadbolt, the one I now had the key for, into place. I put the key in my pocket. I wasn't going to live here. It was just a house. It wasn't my father's prison, and it wouldn't be mine. It was an asset. It was a foundation. I walked down the path, the sun setting, and for the first time, I felt light. The castle I had to reclaim wasn't the one made of brick and mortar. It was the one in my own mind, and the door was finally locked. Thank you so much for listening to this story. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from. I'd love to chat and share thoughts with you all. Please subscribe to Lila Revenge Stories. Like this video. And if you can, support us by hitting that hype button so this story can be heard by more people.